Here we go. I can figure out how to, there we go. All right, hello everyone. It's a quick introduction to this workshop and who I am. My name is Robin Bjornson, and I have been a passionate mover, all things movement, since 2 years old, doing ballet at the age of 2, and then moving on to all forms of movement since then. I've been teaching movements since 2012, mostly in the yoga and dance realm. And I've been studying hormones, the menstrual cycle, dance therapy, and functional movement for the past several years, and starting to integrate that knowledge and science into my life, which has really transformed the way that I move. So I'm happy to and excited to share some of that information that I've been gathering over the past few years. I just wanted to take a second to orient ourselves to our bodies. So wherever you are, if you could just take 1 or 3 breaths. We'll start by rooting your feet into the ground or your sit bones into your chair, wherever you are. And let's go ahead and just take a moment to look away from your screen, somewhere in your room where your eyes are attracted to. And we'll just start by taking a breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Once again, breathing in through the nose. As we exhale, feeling our energy rooting down through the feet. So, and coming into our awareness of your reproductive organ area, your womb space, or whatever it is that you feel most drawn to calling that area for you. Just taking a moment to connect with that region of the body. Finding a breath and just drawing awareness to this space, as that is what is the main topic of today, is talking a little bit more about our ovulation or our menstrual cycle and how it can influence the way that we move, or how we can align our movement with that cycle. All right, let's get into it. So I'll do a quick menstrual cycle overview. A lot of this knowledge actually comes from Shauna right here, my little sister, who's a fertility awareness method practitioner. So a lot of this info comes from her, plus other studies and research that I've done. So you might already be fully aware of the menstrual cycle, but for those of you who might need a little refresher, this is a quick chart drawn by Lindsay Allen, a friend of Shauna's, and this was kind of Shauna's creation and idea over here to create a chart that looks like so. So thank you for the permission to use this. All right, so quick overview. You can see this tiny little dot will start on the left-hand side in menstruation. This is when the cycle begins. So day 1 is first day of your full bleed. And during that time, we're shedding the uterine lining. And this usually lasts for anywhere from 3 to 7 days, though, of course, it can vary. P.S. Anything I say about the cycle, of course, is different for every single person. So take it with a grain of salt and adjust it to what's happening in your body. So then we lead into, as you can see, all these different lines are showing the levels of the hormones that are within us. And after we stop bleeding, during is our follicular phase. And this is when the hormones, especially estrogen, is beginning to climb up the mountain and be on a rise. So it's climbing, climbing, climbing. And then, as you can see, all of a sudden, little LH gets into the game and spikes, which then helps to trigger the release of the mature egg from the ovary, which is ovulation. As you can see here, the little egg popping out of the follicle. From there, estrogen then begins to quickly decline and then takes the lead of progesterone, which this part of the phase after ovulation is called the luteal phase. So the luteal phase lasting anywhere from 10 to, I think, 14 days. Sean was the expert at this one. And it starts to lower down, and then it leads back into menstruation. So this is just a very quick overview, yeah, of the process, just so we can get an idea of the different phases. So this seasons of the womb idea, I think, comes from a lot of different individuals. I personally have got it from the book Wild Power, which is such a beautiful book around kind of the energetics of each phase. And they talk about each phase of the cycle aligning with different seasons. So menstruation being winter, everything is more quiet. Hormones are at their lowest phase. We want to rest and be inward. Follicular phase, hormones are slowly starting to rise. So springtime, there's growth, there's newness. Ovulation, summertime, things are at its peak, full bloom. And then the luteal phase, things are starting to wane down, shed, we're harvesting, we're slowing down, which is autumn. So these ideas are just to kind of help us align with each week of the cycle and how we can start to maybe shift in our awareness of how we approach depending on which season that we're in. All right, so let's take a quick turn talking about movement and fitness and some of the potential pitfalls within a body that has a cycle. Okay, so most of the fitness models since forever have been based off of the circadian rhythm, which is the 24-hour clock. This is taking into account the surge of testosterone that happens daily for those in the male bodies, born male bodies. And there's a surge of testosterone in the morning, it declines, and then another rise in the evening. And this happens in a 24-hour clock. So in the reverse, the infradian clock is about a 28-day cycle in which testosterone surges in the middle of that cycle, which is during our ovulation time. So why is testosterone important in terms of fitness? So testosterone plays a huge role in building muscles, metabolizing fat, sending oxygen to muscles, supporting bone density, energy, and motivation. So all of these different fitness models that are like work, grind daily, you got to move and work out every day, arms day, leg day, chest day, back day, day, and then maybe one rest day on a Sunday. That's like, I know things are changing now as we're getting more awareness, but still that is the dominant narrative of how those we should all work out. And that is definitely based, that does work for those that are operating on more of that circadian rhythm. Another pitfall that we have in the current model is not integrating functional rest. So what do I mean by functional rest? I mean allowing the body to recover with things like joint mobility, myofascial release, heat therapy, anything that is restoring at the tissues and the muscles. Another pitfall is it does not integrate the nervous system. So what do I mean by this? The nervous system is either our parasympathetic, so our rest and digest response, or our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight. And during high intensity workouts or movement, our sympathetic nervous system, so your fight or flight response, gets activated, which this can be this can be a good thing because we're helping our body to learn how to metabolize stress and quickly revert back to the parasympathetic after we have triggered it. However, in most models of fitness, they don't take that into account. So very little recovery time, very little cool downs, just kind of do the hard workout, stretch for 5 minutes, call it good. But if we're not intentional with our recovery, we can kind of stay in that elevated state. All right, last one is only since 1993 have they started doing studies on like cycling bodies. And so most of the research and science that has been done on fitness and movement has been done on biologically male individuals because they're easier to study. Their hormones are much more predictable, and whereas infradian rhythm folks, it's a little bit more challenging. They've labeled it as too difficult because the hormones are changing every single day. But now, only recently, have they started to integrate some more of these studies. So I will say that there is still a large need of more studies to be done in order to validate the experiences of most individuals who have a cycle, a natural cycle. But there have been studies done to start to back some of what I am about to present. All right, so before we get into the actual training with each phase, I wanted to introduce a certain concept from the movement style that I have most recently trained in, which is called the 4-day wave movement training. And what this is recovery-based training. So it's getting us out of that daily grind style of movement. And it's getting us more into a wave-like training system. So how it would look, I wrote in for the movement programming, these are just examples of styles of movement, but take it as you will. But essentially, it goes something like this. It moves on a curve. So let's say we started on Sunday. We would start with no intensity of movement. So very focused on the joints, focused on mobility, restoring of the tissues, the nervous system. We're trying to get it to that parasympathetic state. Then Monday would lead up into a low intensity. So we're starting to add in perhaps lightweight resistance bands, deeper walking, yoga, whatever style of movement works for you, but still keeping it at low. So we're not jacking up the heart rate or pushing ourselves super hard yet, but we're priming the body and the nervous system to say, hey, I'm about to start training you in a bit more intensity the next day. So then we lead into our moderate intensity day. This is where we're pushing our heart rate and ourselves to 70 to 75% heart rate max. Very easy to calculate. If you're interested, we could go into that too. So yeah, basically we're adding weight, we're starting to integrate cardio or strength training or whatever it is for you that feels like a moderate intensity. And then we peak at a high intensity day. So going full on, whether that's cardio, strength training, whatever it is for you, dropping back down to a no or a low intensity day. So the idea is that we're mod and high, challenging the nervous system, bringing us into fight or flight on purpose, so that then when we drop back down into the no or low, we're coming into more of that recovery state. So we can train our nervous system to say, hey, when we get up, it's going to be easy to come back down. And then we continue on that wave. Before I move on, is there any questions around that kind of idea and of programming in this different way?
I just have a quick question. If we're kind of moving on this 4-day wave, and obviously life can get in the way. So what happens if, like, let's say it's supposed to be like a low intensity day for me, but I have scheduled to do like something that's high intensity with like a group of friends or something. Like, how do I adjust for that?
Yeah, totally normal. It's like almost impossible to stick to a perfect wave every week. The idea is that like initially, if you fall off of the wave, so you do something that's high intensity on a low day or something like that, or vice versa, you would just stick with your programming. So if Monday is like always your low day, after you did that super intense hike or whatever it is, ending in the evening with some low intensity, even if it's just like a 5-minute thing to reset your nervous system, and then go for it again on that mod day the next day, and then you jump back into the natural wave. That's what I would say, but you can always like play with it too. If you went full on, then take a no day the next day, even if that's supposed to be your mod day, to give your body. But by no day, really intentionally giving yourself restorative movement versus nothing. So you could kind of play it in either way. Got anything else? All
Yeah,
right.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Is like I know it's kind of choose your own adventure essentially, but is
Mhm.
the idea to get into a rhythm, like I guess is it more important to try to keep the rhythm of the sequence, like
Mhm.
no low mod high, no low mod high, or
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
it more like, and you might not even know the answer to this, but
Yeah.
is it more like a routine to be like, okay, like on Mondays, I try to always do this. So my nervous system kind of knows what to expect.
Yeah.
Um, or yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a big question, but
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, ideally you would, yeah, so if Sunday is always your no day, for example, you would try to stick with that as best you can. But like Shauna said, if you have like a crazy hike or a big swim or something like that, don't not do it just because that's supposed to be your no day. But there are other ways of like still integrating that no intensity day and making sure you get it later on. I think what I heard your question is like, should you prioritize the wave or should you prioritize the more of the order, which to me is kind of the same thing. So can you clarify just a little bit?
yeah, I guess it's kind of going off Shauna's question where if your activity, like let's say I have a high intensity day, like using your example here on Monday, like
Mhm.
I had like a group workout or a group something great,
Yeah, yeah.
then is it, I guess, like, I guess I'm asking the same question, but in a different way. So maybe I
Hmm.
just need clarification around would my priority be for my Tuesday to still be a mod day?
Mm,
Or would my priority to be more of a no low day? Because that's typically what would follow the wave after a high intensity workout.
got you, got you. Yeah. Um, well, I think it would kind of be dependent on how you're overall feeling and also depending on what phase you're in of your cycle, which we'll look at later. However, these waves are like totally moldable, so they're not glued to Sunday always being the no, no matter what. So let's say you did a moderate intensity on Monday, and it was supposed to be your low day. Tuesday, you might decide to do a high day because that's like what you're feeling that day, then prioritize Wednesday being your no. So just switch your wave. And then Thursday being your low. So it can be molded that way as well.
That was helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So I guess that's kind of, yeah, saying the same thing to Shauna about the hiking idea as well, is you can switch the wave around too. Um, all right, moving on. So let's take a pause of the 4-day wave. We'll talk about it again in relationship to the cycles after I move through the movement profile for each phase. So let's get into it. All right. Um, all right. First one we got is, oh, there we go. Follicular phase movement. So this is the springtime movement after you've done bleeding. You are now entering springtime, and it's a slow entrance. So some of us only bleed for 2 or 3 days. Others bleed for 7 days. So it kind of depends on you, but it's a slow build because of the way that estrogen is slowly building upward. So as estrogen builds, so does our energy. You might notice this as you start to tune in that a couple days after your bleed ends, you might start to feel this upsurge of energy and a more outward focus. So this is the time to start building up your intensity. focusing on perhaps more cardio style movement, strength training, and more diversity and fun in your workouts. So this might include trying out new classes, experimenting, finding a new form of movement that you've never tried before. This is a great time to test that out. During this time, your metabolism is a little bit slower. So cardio is going to be in your benefit at this time to quicken your metabolism. You don't need as many calories. We'll talk about nutrition in a sec, but you don't need as many calories during this time. So utilizing, if you are on a weight loss sort of a journey, you would use this time to really start burning up those calories during this phase. Any form of movement really works, but especially cardio-based, running, biking, dancing, hiking, swimming, these sort of things are great during this time. All right, then moving into ovulation phase, movement, summertime. We are increasing in our intensity now, and this is at the peak of our fitness. So if we are comparing this time to the circadian clock, this is a similar style of movement. So we're trying to max out our personal records or our PRs. We're going high intensity, we're running longer, we're lifting heavier, we're pushing ourselves. This is that time going full on. So during this time, our body can release heat much quicker. This is like a research study that they have found is long distance runners end up doing much better if they are racing during their ovulation phase rather than their luteal phase. And this is because the ability to release heat is increased in this phase. So anything cardio based or like increasing your heat during this time is what our body is primed for during this, what's happening hormonally. Great time for competitions, social things, long distance. Yeah, and that is the summer phase. All right, then we lead into our inner autumn or the luteal phase movement. So this can be kind of, before I move on to this, it's also said that you can experiment with doing your movement practices in the mornings in the spring and summertime, just because of the hormones being at their peak in the morning time during this phase. And then during luteal and menstrual phase is when we can start to integrate our movement in the evening time, which is when hormones are at their highest in this place, could help and benefit us. Okay, so luteal phase movement in the first half of your luteal phase, so after about a couple days after you've ovulated, you can start to count this luteal phase time. Excuse me, I have a little cough. So during this time, your progesterone is starting to quickly starting to increase. And progesterone is the hormone that is the relaxing hormone. So it starts to relax our muscles and joints. And it also is starting to add in the breakdown of muscle. Therefore, during the luteal phase is not the ideal time for trying to lift your heaviest or focus on like only weight-bearing exercise. It's also not the most ideal time to focus on cardio because of what is happening within, which is basically your body is breaking down muscle and it's harder to release heat. Thus, you can overheat easier during this time. So we want to start slowing down our movement. So focusing on slow strength training, lighter weights, maybe longer reps with lighter weights, more mobility and flexibility focused, and also lots of walking. So I'm going to talk about walking in a second here when I talk about cortisol levels. But cortisol is quickly the hormone that is our stress hormone. Apologies, my throat is very locked up. Hold on one moment. Okay, cortisol is our stress hormone. And during the luteal phase, because of the potential of becoming pregnant, cortisol levels go up. We're more on alert just in case there did happen to be an egg or an implantation. Cortisol is usually seen to be a little bit higher during this phase. So why do I mention that? Well, cortisol can actually prevent us from things like if you are on some sort of a weight loss journey, though you don't, of course, have to be, but if you are, this is what can actually start to slow down metabolism, and rather than using up fat for energy, it tells and signals to the body that we have to hang on to it and store it. So if we are doing high intensity movement during this phase, it can jack up the cortisol, thus jacking up fat storage during this phase. So a lot of folks describe their fitness journey as like not being that effective. They're doing HIIT style training 5 days a week all month and they don't see any results. Well, that is most likely why. All right. Lastly, our menstrual phase movement. So hormones are at our lowest, our body's working very hard to shed the uterine lining. So now is the time for rest, restorative movement. High intensity training can backfire. Similar thing to what I was talking about with the cortisol, but also with overexerting ourselves. So our body is really asking to rest, reset, so that during this upcoming cycle, it can have a nice healthy egg rather than being flooded with all this cortisol and confusing messaging. So focusing on things like myofascial release work, slow walks in nature, yoga, light swimming, or just sleeping, just skipping movement altogether, whatever your body is asking for and what feels good. So that is the idea behind there. All right, before we move on, are there any questions for each of those phases? No. All right. Okay, so back to the 4-day wave. So I've created a different variation of the 4-day wave, which looks like this, something like this, where follicular phase would be kind of that traditional wave that I was talking about. No low, mod high, no mod high. Summer might be something like no mod high, 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 no low mod. So a huge, bigger peak and more high intensity days. Luteal or inner autumn might be no low, maybe sticking to the moderate days and never getting to high. And then same with menstruation, no, low, mod, no, low, mod. So kind of adjusting your waves depending on the phase that you're in. Okay, and before I move on to stress, which I pretty much got into already, but just to add on, these are all just different ideas based on what is happening hormonally. And it's in no way a rule to say that you can't have a race while you're bleeding, or you can't lift heavy weights while you're on your luteal phase or anything like that. But in terms of creating sustainable systems for you to follow, I've started integrating this in my practice over the past year and have seen a huge, huge change in being able to really stick with my waves because they're connected to how I actually feel internally and energetically. So this is the idea behind that, to not shame ourselves for being too tired. It's honoring ourselves for being tired and wanting to rest. All right, so quick more talk. Sorry about the stressful picture. Cortisol and exercise. So in the luteal phase, like I've mentioned, our cortisol is a little bit higher. So if you are doing any intensity exercises, the ideal is to keep it under 30 minutes. After 30 minutes is when cortisol then is spiked. Going for 20 to 30-minute walks, slow but steady paced walks during this phase is luteal phase is an amazing thing as well because it lowers your cortisol levels. Training HIIT in the beginning phases is a great thing to do because it teaches our body how to synthesize cortisol and stress faster. So, doing something like 90 seconds of intense movement, 30 seconds of rest, these sort of styles of training can help to learn to synthesize stress. And recovery is crucial, right? So that is what I have to say very quickly. We could go into depth a lot more in all of those. Before I move on into nutrition, is there any questions or comments there? No. All right. Cool. So let's move on to nutrition. Nutrition and movement are one side of the same coin. They both help and assist each other out, as well as assisting us in what's happening hormonally. So both movement and nutrition will help us in understanding and balancing where we're at. So we can, like we move with the seasons, we can also eat with the seasons. So looking into eating with the seasons. All right, so during menstruation, the idea is that we are eating to support the shedding of the uterine lining. So trying to add in more nutrient-dense foods, especially ones that include zinc and iron. So things like seaweeds, seafoods, dark greens. I will, in a moment, share in the chat a document from the book In the Flow by Alyssa Vitti. That is where a lot of this information comes from. And she basically is also a student of Chinese medicine and has thought about foods in relationship to the seasons and the warming versus the cooling effects. So she has a beautiful list full of different grains, vegetables, meats, nuts, and seeds for each phase. So I will attach that into the chat here in a moment. So during menstruation, also thinking about eating really warm foods, rich foods to replenish the body's needs during this time. All right. Perfect. Now let's move on to our follicular phase eating. So during the follicular phase or springtime, because our estrogen is rising, we're trying to choose foods that support the rising of estrogen levels. So choosing phytoestrogen style foods, which basically mimic and help to produce estrogen in the body. So different different vegetables such as broccoli, lettuce, artichokes, zucchini, these sort of things, along with supporting our microbiome through probiotics. So lots of sauerkrauts and kimchi and fermented foods during this time can help maintain a healthy biome so that we're ready for, we're preparing that space for a healthy ovulation or a healthy egg to release. Because the metabolism is slower at this time, you can choose grains that are lighter in terms of the glycemic index. So things like barley and oats, quinoa and amaranth. yeah, so that is the springtime eating. You can also think about like spring foods, eggs and chicken and sprouts. All right, then we're moving into ovulation, ovulatory foods. So similar to the last, but now we're choosing foods that are supporting the healthy egg and the release of the healthy egg. So lots of fiber and antioxidants to begin the process of metabolizing estrogen and ensuring that we don't have too much estrogen, which can then cause things like acne and other sort of symptoms. So quick note about excess estrogen. This is one of the most common things that different practitioners see in basically folks who are having hormonal imbalances. And it is due to a lot of environmental factors. So many people unknowingly have too much estrogen. So this could be from things like hormone treated animal products, um, different foods like they say tofu and soy milk and soybeans, that sort of thing, are phytoestrogens. So if we're eating them for our entire cycle phase, we can just be boosting estrogen. Not to say those foods are bad, but eating them more in the beginning is kind of the idea. Environmental contaminants can also cause this, as well as eating a ton of fat, because estrogen is stored in the fat tissue, as well as a lot of alcohol. So these are all things that are in the classic American diet. So no wonder that a lot of people have excess estrogen. Yeah, so eating a lot more fiber and antioxidants can start to help beginning the flushing of that out. Summertime, you're also thinking about lots of salads and greens, smoothies, sprouts. Think summer, what do you like in the summertime? All right, ending in the luteal phase. All right, so now we're still wanting to flush out estrogen. So eating different vegetables such as cabbage, cauliflower, cucumber, these sort of things. I'll give you the list. You can go into more depth and start to help that. We're trying to eat foods that encourage and support progesterone production. Foods that help to decrease cortisol. So lots of different healthy fats can start to decrease cortisol during this time. Again, ton of fiber. So we want to remove that estrogen because that is how the cycle works. And then most importantly, we're trying to eat more slow burning carbs. So rice, sweet potatoes, these sort of things. The reason why many people experience intense sugar cravings and salt cravings during that PMS time, or that time before your period, your premenstruum, is because progesterone actually causes water retention. So it causes our cells to hold on to more water, and then it creates this need for sodium and sugar for quicker energy. So if we can balance that out and invite in more slow burning foods, slow burning carbs, we can curb those cravings. Because if we do give in and start to eat sugar and salt all day long, it can exacerbate some of those premenstruum symptoms, headaches, acne, breast tenderness, chest tenderness, all of that. So yeah, that is the idea behind that. Yeah, and this is a little more about bloating in the PMS time. That progesterone can cause the fluid retention and smoothing of the intestines, which then can cause some intestine sensitivity, slowed bowel movement time, so maybe a little bit more constipation. Again, why fiber and staying hydrated comes into place. High sodium, carbonation, and processed foods will increase your bloating, so trying to lessen those foods during this time could benefit you if you do struggle with PMS symptoms. All right, one last thing, which I didn't put on here, is protein. So especially during your luteal phase, consider, if you are working out and following this style of movement, consider increasing your protein amount by at least 20 grams. So that's like a nice 4-ounce chicken breast, just to give you an idea, or like a scoop of protein powder, for example. Because your muscles are actually geared for breaking down during the luteal phase. So increasing your protein will help to slow down that breakdown so that you're prepared for the upcoming cycle. All right, so just thinking of foods as medicine and being able to take care of where we're at hormonally, and make sure to enjoy those foods. All right, I am going to link a copy of that list. It's been super helpful for me to just follow that as like my grocery list. So even if I don't eat exactly everything on that list and I'm still eating from other phases, it's still nice to include a couple of them and know that I'm doing my body well by doing that. So before we end with that, is there any questions in relationship to nutrition?
Not a question, but I would love to just mention seed cycling if I can.
Yeah, please, if you'd like to talk about that for a moment here.
Yeah, so seed cycling is a concept of eating certain seeds at different times of our cycle to it's like a very natural way to help our hormone balance, and seeds are a really good way to get that. So the idea is that for the first half of the cycle, from menstruation to ovulation, we would eat 1 to 2 tablespoons of flax seeds and pumpkin seeds. And then the second half of the cycle, after ovulation, all the way to right before our periods, would be ground sunflower and sesame. So 1 to 2 tablespoons of ground seeds every single day. And so flax seeds, I'll just go really quickly. So flax seeds are a really rich dietary source of lignans, and lignans really help to regulate estrogen and promote like the detox of estrogen through and zinc and thallium, I think it is. And these all really help, like you were talking about, with reducing high levels of estrogen in the body. And then pumpkin seeds also have really high sources of magnesium and zinc, both which are minerals that reduce PMS symptoms. And then for the second half, sunflower seeds are packed with nutrients, also magnesium. We need magnesium all the time. So they have magnesium, but they also have vitamin Bs, vitamin E's, I believe, and zinc. And they're also really beneficial for like just in the luteal phase, like balancing brain chemistry and reducing irritability and stuff like that. And then sesame seeds are high in help the production of progesterone in the luteal phase, and then selenium, which helps to maintain and function of the corpus luteum, which is what is producing progesterone in the body.
Thank you, Shauna. Yeah, I'm less practiced with the seed cycling part of it. So thanks for sharing that information. And yeah, all the different ways that we can start to integrate this knowledge, I think, is a beautiful thing. Right, as well. Awesome. Okay, well, is there any other questions in regards to movement or foods before I am ending and announcing something new coming up? No. Okay. So this is an invitation for anyone watching. Shauna, my sister, and I are hosting a 3-part series coming up in July, in the evenings, and we will be diving even deeper into this information. So Shauna has been expertising herself in the ovulation cycle and cyclical living. And so we are going deeper into this in three evenings together, and also with a kind of a program style workbook, so that you can start to integrate living in sync with your cycle, not only with movement and nutrition, but also in terms of our creative lives and professional lives and family lives, and also just having a deeper look at the menstrual cycle for reproductive health as well. So if this is interesting to you, you'll receive an email to sign up for it. We're really excited to offer it. So yeah, I would love to see any of you there. That is coming up soon. And we have completed. If there's any questions, I'll stop my share. Any final comments or anything like that? Love to hear how any of this information landed, if any of this was new for you, or if you've been practicing it for a while. If you want to say anything about how this way of moving and eating has kind of transformed how you feel, anything like that, would love to hear and just have a dialogue. I'll stop the recording now.